Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Motivation, the show where we dive headfirst into the minds of the most amazing individuals around, hoping to gain their knowledge, and with their knowledge we will be able to learn ourselves, teach ourselves, grow ourselves, and reform ourselves. With me today, I am honored to have an unbelievable guest who is filled with degrees, who wants to not mention any of these degrees, yet an unbelievably down-to-earth human being, the CEO of a wonderful, wonderful initiative called the Teddy Bear Clinic. With me, Dr. Shaheeda Omar. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shaheeda, and welcome to Motivation.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is indeed a privilege to be with you on this show, and I trust we will engage with people out there.
No, it's wonderful to have you, Dr. Shaheeda, and really it is my privilege to have you on the show, and thank you for joining me. The Teddy Bear Clinic, unbelievable initiative. You're doing amazing work there. Abused children, children that are going through trauma, children that have mental health issues, children that have parental issues. Can you tell us more about the Teddy Bear Clinic?
Okay, so the Teddy Bear Clinic was founded in 1986, and it was founded by the late Professor Lorna Jacqueline, who was a neurodevelopmental pediatrician, and she saw that there was a gap in the market where medico-legal support was only, orientated towards adults and not children. And that's how the clinic started, purely as a medical clinic, and then moved on to psychosocial support, where trauma debriefing, ongoing supportive counseling for victims and their families, and the legal support in terms of court preparation when criminal charges have been opened and children have to testify, but also a lot of community outreach work to learners at schools, to educators, to school governing boards and management teams. And we also work with children who come into conflict with the law. So it's a 360-degree approach, holistic, integrated, and comprehensive, working from an ecological framework, working at a micro, meso, and macro level, where we've also amended and made strong submissions against legislations that were violating the constitutional rights of children.
Wow, that is incredible, incredible. It encompasses everything that a child would need for support when they do not have the support. Of course, abuse is a huge factor, be it physical, be it emotional, be it mental abuse. It really is a huge factor. And these types of things carry on into an adult life. And that is what I want to get into with you here. I know you deal with a lot of children in that, but surely you see the impact that it has for an adult. And sometimes we as adults, we don't realize that we're behaving in a specific way, and our subconscious is what's actually bringing it out, and it might be formed from trauma from childhood, emotional abuse that we didn't even know that we were receiving, things that we would have seen as the norm. You know, you're growing up in a home and you're being told you are stupid, as an example, and that sticks with you, and you'll grow up with this complex, and these things trigger you. I want to know, as an adult, is there a way that we can, first of all, identify these traumas, and then secondly, change these traumas?
And thank you for raising that. I think that is so critical, because often we would label the person with a mood disorder, a personality disorder. That person is bad, that person is mad. And
Exactly.
if we peel the layers, we unpack and interrogate that, we actually realize that behind that layers of badness and madness, that's actually a very sad person who has not addressed the unresolved issues in their lives. And often those unresolved issues come to niggle and affect their relationships, their interpersonal relationships with those that are nearest and dearest to them. So past trauma, history of victimization could certainly impact on a person's life. But at the same time, I also want to say that we've seen so many adults who have been victims of childhood trauma, and having been given the opportunity to access support, psychosocial support and intervention, have actually bounced back, have been able to address and resolve those issues, address their unmet emotional needs, which are often difficult to identify.
So the support structure needs to be there as
Indeed,
well.
I think it's about accessibility, availability, but also enabling that adult, that help is a call away, and that there's hope for everyone. And that's the message I really would like to emphasize on that there are opportunities for hope and people have overcome adversities. You know, many people come from dysfunctional backgrounds, and you identified the different forms of abuse, which I think are so critical. For me, the most, you know, difficult and disturbing one is emotional abuse, because it's not tangible. It's not something that you can see with the naked eye, but it is so toxic, and it is so, you know, it affects the whole nervous system, and it impacts on the well-being, the psychological state of that individual. And if they have not had the opportunity or they have not reached out for help, they will continue, you know, that pattern of abuse in their own lives, with partners, with their own children, within their family structures, because they don't know any better, and that's what becomes normalized and normal to them, and perpetuates the cycle of violence.
Now, what happens to an adult who doesn't feel that they were abused? They feel, accept me for who I am, this is who I am, you deal with it. How do we then get through to that adult who is too embarrassed to talk, whether it was a sexual abuse or emotional abuse, physical abuse, whatever it may be, they are too embarrassed to talk about it. And I mean, it happens in many times where 25, 30 years down the line, you're holding on to this and this abuse is eating you up inside. What happens to that adult?
So I think the important thing to understand is, one never pushes a person. The important thing is to move at the pace of the individual, making support available to say that these are, you know, options for reaching out for help, but at the same time to say, I can see some things are not right. I can see you experiencing some difficulty, or that you're struggling, and just reassuring the person that there are safe platforms.
And that they are not alone as well.
And indeed, to provide that kind of safe platform, and reassure them that there's confidentiality, and that other people who have gone through other issues, maybe similar, maybe somewhat different, but at the end of the day, they feel more in power and in control. I think the important thing to understand here is that the loss of control, and obviously giving a person that opportunity to explore options. So not telling them what to do, but these are options that are available.
And being that support structure for them. What I do find, you know, in the world of social media, in the world of Google, a lot of self-diagnosis when it comes to this. So words such as depression, anxiety, narcissism are being thrown around on a daily basis. You open up your Instagram and these are the things that pop up. You start questioning yourself, you start questioning those around you. If they have these traits, how would we go about actually identifying these traits, and then from there dealing with it and changing it?
So I think, you know, I always say with the advent of technology, we've had lots of opportunities for enhancing our knowledge base, but it could become a friend or a foe, and we need to be aware of that, that using Dr. Google for minor things, that's fine, just to give you some direction, but not to actually, you know, stay focused on that, but rather seek professional help, because we can just, you know, make self-diagnosis, and that may not be the correct thing, because there are, you know, a lot of subtleties and similarities as well. So let the professionals, let the mental health expert or the medical doctor assist in that kind of
what I do feel is if you do feel that you have some sort of a disorder and you are researching it, then that would be a sign to go to a professional for the help.
Absolutely. I think the moment you feel there's a sense of discomfort, a sense of disequilibrium, you know, you feel that things are not in balance and that you're feeling a bit unsettled, then that requires a professional intervention.
Okay, fantastic. That's brilliant.
And I think one needs to stress that by reaching out is actually a sign of strength. It's, you know,
I love that. Yes.
And it's not seen as a weakness. It's not because you're not able to cope. The fact that you are reaching out means that you're trying to take back a sense of power and control in your life, and trying to address whatever it is that is bothering you.
The power of vulnerability, isn't it? You know, a lot of men struggle with this. A lot of men struggle with being vulnerable, especially with their partners, and their partners don't understand where all of this is coming from. So as a man, you've been told from the start, don't cry, you're a big boy, don't cry, boys don't cry, and it gets drilled into your head and it becomes part of your subconscious.
It's a socialization process, I think, and that's what, if we look at the gendered norms, the gendered stereotypes, and where does that come from? You know, a lot of us are from a patriarchal system, patriarchal background, but also it's normalized where boys do not play with dolls. Boys, you know, if you play with a doll, you're a sissy,
Yes,
and
yes.
boys don't cry. So this macho, you know, this myth
Yes.
that children are raised with, where they are classified and categorized, I think is also something that one needs to be aware of, and that families need to be very aware of the way they're raising their children, because socializing them and putting them into specific boxes is not actually the way to go. But one needs to look at values, attitudes, and also ensuring that it's a balanced approach, a balanced way of raising children.
Yes, definitely. And you know, this is a topic that I think if we go on, we can spend an entire day talking about. Really, I wish men could understand the power of vulnerability, and hopefully we can get it out there. But right now, unfortunately, we do need to take a break, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation so far. Join us after the break, and we will continue this intriguing discussion. And welcome back. Just before the break, we were discussing vulnerability in men with Dr. Shaheeda Omar. And let's dive right back into that topic. Dr. Shaheeda, so in our community, we find that men find it very important to show this macho side of them. And with this, they feel that they have power and control over everything. Is there a way for us to get through this and make men understand that if their partner can understand their vulnerability, if their partner can understand that men think logically and women think emotionally, and maybe put themselves in an emotional state just to understand their partner, would we be able to have better relationships? Would we be able to develop better children? Would we be able to develop better men going forward?
So I want to say something, and I think it's important that in the work we do, we see children and we see adults, and the important thing that stands out for me, the compelling theme that we see, that boys and men can be victims too, that they are equally vulnerable. They have also been subjected to abuse and trauma. However, I think what one needs to appreciate and recognize is that there needs to be a clear distinction between masculinity and aggression. The two are conflated. It's almost as if it's synonymous. If you are projecting masculinity, this macho image, men feel that it needs to be associated and attached and accompanied with aggression. There's a difference between aggression and assertion, expression. And I think that's where we need to make the strong distinctions, where people need to analyze their values, their attitudes, their belief systems, where they come from, the homes they came from, how they were raised then. And of course, the way they were raised, what did they like about it? What did they not like about it?
Yes.
What would they like to have changed if they were given an opportunity to start their childhood again? Because all of that impacts on the current situation, current circumstances in terms of partner relationships, relationships with their children, and how to strengthen and reinforce a healthy network within the family structure, because that's where all the challenges are.
Yes.
And just, I know you haven't raised this, but I want to say to you and to the viewers out there that often parents will come forward, my child has a problem, fix my child. That's the response. It's like, you fix my child. And our response is that your child is the symptom bearer. Your child is actually the switchboard acting out. The child is acting out because of what is going on around the child. They cannot verbalize, articulate because of their, age, and of course being in a position of the status of a child. And that's when children start acting out, either being aggressive, the bullying, and you're seeing stealing, lying, truancy, and when we unpack all that, we find that actually that child is very sad, there's depression, there are other risk factors that are contributing to this behavior. So I just want to make you understand and for everybody to realize that even that aggressive man, if you take the layers away, you're going to see it's because they've been socialized, it's normalized, it becomes a repertoire of behavior which is expected. You know, it's implicit because of the patriarchal norms, and I think that is what we need to be aware of, and that a lot of men are also subjected to abuse. We must not forget that. We do a lot of gender-based violence work, and men are also part of that spectrum, but of course the incidence is much higher in the female population.
I also do find with men, again, they a bit shy to come out and talk about it.
And they see it as a mark of weakness.
Yes.
To come forward and say, I'm not coping, or I feel I'm being violated. So how do they address many situations? There's this passive-aggressive behavior, or even it becomes more visible where there's verbal abuse, physical abuse, economic abuse, because they're trying to regain a sense of power and control. And I think just to remind everybody that this pattern of violence can continue because children observe best by people they live with, people that are supposed to protect them, love them, shield them, and they grow up to repeat the cycle of violence.
You know, I heard somewhere that we are like a box of Lego when we're born, and a lot of our parents throw the manual away thinking they know how to put us together. And they put us together and all the pieces are together just in the wrong place. And it is now our adult responsibility to disassemble ourselves and then reassemble ourselves in the correct way by finding the correct manual that helps us do what we need to do.
So Mo, you're saying something so critical here. I think we need to just elaborate a little bit. Is that, you know, parents coming forward and saying, my child has a problem, they actually need to look at the bigger problem. Where is it coming from? And actually say, what can we do collectively as a family? Not take the child for interventions and supportive counseling or whatever kind of therapeutic interventions, but as a family, what role do each one of them have and how can they support each other?
And I think that would stem from each parent, first of all, looking at their own faults, fixing their own faults up, which brings me to a really important topic of neuroplasticity, the ability to change our neural pathways for behavior. Is it possible?
Absolutely. I think if you look at a lot of the studies that have been conducted in this field, particularly around the neural pathways that are created as a result of adversities, whether it's abuse and stress and trauma that people are exposed to, and of course in children, they find that, of course, we are fully aware that the prefrontal cortex continues to develop until the age of 25 years. And for children, the neural pathways, if they've been exposed or subjected to any form of trauma, whether it's the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, witnessing domestic violence, even the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, all of that, natural disasters, all of that impacts on that brain.
Yes.
And what actually happens is because of the cortisol levels increasing, the stress hormone levels increasing, obviously it starts affecting those pathways and they start rewiring. So they start firing and they rewire and they reconfigure, which then means that it's going to predispose them to certain behaviors in the future. So we would question why is this child has an addictive disorder? Why is this child obsessive compulsive? This child or this adult now has a personality disorder, the mood disorder, but it's all earlier experiences of trauma that of course affects the trajectory of their child growing up into an adult if they have not received any kind of appropriate, adequate and timeous interventions and support. Sure. But we also need to understand and appreciate that there's hope, like we've spoken before, that if they receive that kind of support, the psychosocial support with mental health professionals, medical professionals, in severe cases, administration of medication could certainly enable to come back in full force, bounce back, be resilient, and become a productive member of the family and of the community they live in.
Am I correct in saying that every adult carries an inner child with them, and if we can heal that inner child, we can have a healed adult?
And absolutely and beautifully articulated. I think each one of us has an inner child in us, and it's always trying to fill that hole inside in whatever shape or form it may take. You know, you might, a parent as a child who did not go to a fancy school or who did not have access to luxury items. So that inner child inside is still seeking, searching, wanting that.
Craving.
And what do? They overcompensate by giving it to their children, whatever it is, whatever they did not have, the deprivations and the losses they suffered, they overcompensate in their immediate families.
And that can be a form of an abuse as well to a child?
Well,
We're
it would be
overcompensating for your inner child?
It would certainly compromise the health and well-being of the child, because it's a disservice to the child, not actually assisting the child, empowering, enabling the child to become autonomous, independent, and creative. I think the creativity is something that we lack a lot. We do everything for children because we were left to do things on our own, for ourselves, and we feel, oh, we missed out, so let's do everything for our child.
Wow, Dr. Shaheeda, this has been an incredibly informative conversation, and really I know we're going to meet again in the future, inshallah, to be able to discuss this further. And I know I want to get this message out to everybody, all the listeners. Your inner child is the most important child in your life. And if you can help fix your inner child, you will be able to help the children around you, your children, and those around you the same way that Dr. Shaheeda helps those around her. Look after your inner child. Look after yourself. I hope that this was informative. We dived headfirst into the mind, the beautiful, brilliant mind of Dr. Shaheeda Omar. Join me again on Moetivation the next time, where we dive headfirst again into another brilliant mind. This is Moetivation, and let me motivate you.